Welcome back to day 2 here at Cows Week, and it's a bit of a damp end to the day unfortunately, but on the plus side it wasn't like this for most of the day. In fact, today was pretty good really. It was a breeze was supposed to be in the forecast, said it was going to be very light indeed. Fortunately it didn't quite turn out like that, and we had about 10 to 12 knots of breeze, fairly stable conditions as well. We didn't see the big showers that we saw on the first day, and I think most of the classes got some pretty nice windward leeward racing in. Today was slightly different from yesterday in that quite a lot of the IRC classes were starting on a committee boat start out to the west of Bewley. And it turned out to be a superb place to start the race because they had the wide open expanse of the Western Solent, a westerly breeze and plenty of room to play. But what was interesting was that as the start started to roll through, the east-going tide built more and more, and it changed the tactics, and it ended up being a classic Cows Week start where you had to dash for the shore, get out of the tide, beat your way down the mainland shore, down towards Lymington area, and then they were doing some windward lewards from there. The class that caught my eye once again was the Cape 31, and although there wasn't really enough breeze today to see them light up, you can see why these boats are being talked about such a lot. They really are pretty interesting. They're pretty pokey little 30-footers, designed, as I was saying yesterday, for a bit of inshore and offshore action. Probably coastal racing is probably the best way to describe them. Probably get into trouble for saying that, but that's what they look like anyway. So they've had some very good racing indeed. And in the one design classes, well, there was plenty to watch there. There was Giles Peckham for a start in the Daring, showing why he's just so good in this class. He went out and scored another win in his Daring today. One of the other boats that really stood out for me anyway in the white group was to hear that the restored Dragon, Prince Philip's classic Dragon that has taken 2 years to restore, won again today at the hands of Graham Bailey. That's really impressive for a classic boat to go out there and beat the modern boats for a second day running. The XOD fleet, that was pretty competitive, just as you'd imagine, as was the Flying 15 fleet, which seems to have a bigger fleet than it's had for many years. It really is quite tempting to get in one of those. And it was Rupert Mander and his crew in Men Behaving Badly that won today. Anybody who's followed that class will know that they are familiar people at the top of the fleet or on the podium. The XODs are often the centre of attention at Cows. For a start, they often turn up with the biggest fleet, and in fact this year, even though their numbers are down, they're still the biggest fleet at Cows Week. They're also fascinating to watch because they have such a massive history behind them. And of course, they're sailed by some of the country's best sailors, so there's always really good racing. And today was particularly noticeable because they started off the squadron line and they were beating along the shore past the green against a tide that was building, and so it meant that they had to get close in all the way up that shoreline, and it also meant that you had to get your nose in front to get clear air to do it. And the team that did that best was Peter Baines's team. They just got their nose in front and it was enough to extend their lead, and by the time they got to their first mark, which was only round the corner in Gurnard, the tide had really built, and when they went around that mark and headed off downwind, they were gone. Now, aside from the racing, there's plenty to look at down here at Cows, particularly if you're a bit of a boat spotter. And there's a couple of boats that really stand out for me. I've been passing them the last couple of mornings, and the first one I want to show you is this one, Oystercatcher 35. It's Richard Matthews' latest boat. You know, Richard Matthews was the founder of Oyster Yachts, and as anybody who's followed what he's done on the racecourse will know, he's a seriously enthusiastic racer. This is his latest machine. It's gorgeous, isn't it? It's called a CF 520. It was built by Fibre Mechanics down in Lymington, designed by Sean Carkeek. And if you think it looks a little bit like Ram, the Fast 40 Plus, you'd be right, because it is sort of a development of that, but it's not just a blown up copy. It's actually been designed, interestingly enough, not only for inshore and offshore racing, but it's got water ballast tanks, and it's also been designed to be sailed by a fairly modest crew, sort of about 6 or 8 crew, which I think is quite an interesting idea, really. It certainly looks the part. It's only just arrived here in the last couple of days, down in Cows. Richard's planning to do some of Cowes Week, as he usually does, and he's planning to do the Fastnet, as he always does. So I'm looking forward to seeing a bit more of that boat. Beautiful, very nice. In fact, to be honest, I'm looking forward to being invited on board. Just saying, Richard. Now, there's another boat I want to show you, which is sort of at the other end of the scale, I guess. But I cannot take my eyes off this boat every time it comes past, and even when I go past it in the river. It's a boat called Eager. Actually, I could just point out that this is Lutein, for anybody who wanted to know. The boat of the Lloyd's Sailing Club. But the boat I really want to show you is this one, Eager. It's a Nicholson 55, and I think it is absolutely gorgeous. It barely needs any other description than that, to be honest, does it? It's just beautiful. I don't know whether it's just because it takes me back to my childhood and when boats like these were quite a common sight on the racing scene, or whether it's just because it's got those gorgeous classic lines. But she's racing here at Cowes Week. She's got a new suit of sails. She looks fully tricked up out on the water. She's really impressive. And as I say, every time I see her out there, I get a little bit distracted. There we go. There's plenty more. We'll be bringing it to you later in the week.